What if the story everyone knows is backwards? Not a mastermind starting a race war, a frightened hustler reacting to one crisis after another. First, a drug burn becomes Black Panther paranoia. Then Gary Hinman is killed, and Bobby Beausoleil tries to make it look political. When that cover story fails, the family copies it at Cielo Drive, sloppily, secondhand, without Manson inside. The next night, at LaBianca, Manson steps back in to show them control. The crime scenes tell one story, Bugliosi sold another. Charles Manson was no mastermind. He was just a lucky guy who kept delaying the inevitable until his luck ran out. The usual version of the Manson story is neat. Too neat. Charles Manson wants to start a race war. He sends his followers into Los Angeles. They murder strangers. They write messages on the walls. And somehow, all of it fits into one insane prophecy called Helter Skelter. But there is another way to read the same sequence. Not as a plan, as a panic. Not as prophecy, as cleanup. Not as a mastermind moving pieces across a board. As a small-time criminal who keeps creating bigger emergencies, then getting other people to deal with them. And if you want to understand Tate and LaBianca, you have to start before them. You have to start with Bernard Crowe. Tex Watson burns Bernard Crowe on a drug deal. Crowe does what you would expect him to do. He threatens the family. And for Manson, that threat becomes something much bigger than one angry man looking for his money. Manson goes to meet Crowe. He brings a gun. He shoots him. And then he believes two things. One, that he has killed Bernard Crowe. Two, that Crowe was connected to the Black Panthers. This is the part that matters, because after Crowe, the family is not living inside some clean ideological master plan. They are living inside fear. Fear that Crowe is dead. Fear that he was a Panther. Fear that the Panthers are coming to Spawn Ranch to retaliate. So they arm themselves. They watch the roads. They wait for revenge. Helter Skelter makes Manson sound like he is controlling history. But in this version, he is doing something much more familiar. He is trying to survive the consequences of his last stupid decision. Then comes Gary Hinman, not Cielo Drive, not LaBianca. Hinman, a musician, a friend of people around the family. And in late July 1969, he becomes the next emergency. The dispute is over money, not prophecy, not a race war. Money. Bobby Beausoleil goes to Hinman's house with Susan Atkins and Mary Brunner. The situation drags on, it does not resolve, and eventually Manson shows up. This is where the story usually turns into one more insane Manson detail. Manson cuts Gary Hinman's ear, but the meaning of that moment is not only what it says to Hinman, it is what it says to the people watching, to Beausoleil, to Atkins, to anyone who still thinks this can go back to normal. The message is not complicated. This has already gone too far. You are already in it. Now clean it up. Manson does not solve the problem. He makes it worse. Then he leaves. That is not a mastermind. That is a man escalating a situation, then walking away from the damage. And Bobby Beausoleil is left with the consequences. After Hinman is killed, Beausoleil has a problem. The body points somewhere. The money dispute points somewhere. The people involved point somewhere. So he tries to give the scene a different meaning. He writes political piggy. He draws what is meant to look like a Black Panther paw print. At first, that can look random or ideological, or like the beginning of Helter Skelter. But in this theory, it has a much simpler and more desperate logic. Beausoleil is trying to kill two birds with one stone. Point the police to the Panthers as murder suspects, and this way the cops will help get the Panthers off the family's back and free Bobby from any suspicion. That is why the Crowe incident matters so much. Without Crowe, the Panther message looks like prophecy. With Crowe, it looks like fear. It looks like a cover story aimed in two directions at once. Mislead the police, solve the Panther issue, and for a moment, maybe Beausoleil thinks it worked, but it did not. On August 6th, Bobby Beausoleil is arrested for the Hinman murder, and suddenly the cover story has failed. The police are not safely chasing Panthers. They have Bobby, they have a path back toward the family, and Manson has a new emergency. This is the point where the mastermind theory starts to wobble, because the next murders do not look like the next stage of a perfect plan. They look like people trying to repair a failed cover-up by making the cover-up look real. 2 nights after Beausoleil is arrested, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian go to Cielo Drive. Manson is not inside the house. He is not standing there directing every moment. He's not moving through the rooms like a commander. That matters. The group is working from second-hand understanding. They know pieces of the Hinman story. They know the idea of messages. They know the idea of making a murder look political. They know Beausoleil is in jail. And they know the story has to point away from him. So Cielo Drive becomes a copycat of what they think Beausoleil did. Not a clean operation. Not a controlled ritual. A crude imitation. A second-hand version of a second-hand idea. By morning, 5 people are dead. And the scene is louder, messier, and more famous than anything Manson could control. This is why the Helter Skelter version is so seductive, because it gives the chaos a shape. It says, look, this was the plan. But maybe the shape came later. Maybe the crime scene did not reveal the plan. Maybe Bugliosi gave America a way to understand something that was uglier, stupider, and less organized. Because if Cielo was supposed to free Beausoleil, it failed. If it was supposed to misdirect police, it failed. If it was supposed to make the Panther story convincing, it failed. All it did was create a catastrophe so large that Manson had to respond to it. The next night is different. This time, Manson goes with them. This time, he chooses the house. Leno and Rosemary LaBianca are not random in the same way the people inside Cielo Drive were random. Manson enters the house himself. He ties them up himself. Then he leaves. And that is the point. He does not stay. He does not take the same risk his followers take. But he does show them the structure. Choose the target. Enter first. Take control. Create the situation. Then let other people finish it. LaBianca is not Manson launching a grand plan. It is Manson reacting to the fact that the previous night got away from him. Cielo was freelanced. Cielo was sloppy. Cielo was second-hand. So at LaBianca, he steps back in. Not because he is a genius, because he has lost control and needs to perform control in front of the people who still follow him. That is a very different Manson. Not a prophet, not a mastermind, not the architect of history. A manipulator, yes. A coward, yes. Dangerous, absolutely, but not a genius. The pattern is not brilliant. It is repetitive. Crowe creates fear. Hinman creates a mess. The Hinman cover-up fails. Cielo tries to copy that cover-up. LaBianca tries to correct Cielo. Each step is not the next move in a master plan. It is the next desperate answer to the last disaster. And that is why the old story gives Manson too much credit. Helter Skelter turns panic into mythology. It turns improvisation into prophecy. It turns cowardice into command. It makes Manson larger than he was. But the crime scenes in sequence tell a smaller story. And in some ways a more frightening one, because it means the murders did not require a mastermind. They required fear, loyalty, confusion, and a man who understood how to make other people carry the consequences of his failures. That was Manson's real talent, not planning, not prophecy, delay. He delayed the consequences of Crowe. He delayed the consequences of Hinman. He delayed the consequences of Beausoleil's arrest. He delayed the consequences of Cielo by turning the next night into a demonstration until there was nowhere left to delay. And once the luck ran out, the myth began.